Alright guys, the next director on the list is Werner Herzog. And not a lot of you might know about him. And then again, a lot of you might know about him, which would be really great because I do consider him to be one of the greatest film directors of all time. Um, he has such an extensive filmography that I have not been able to watch all of his films, and nor am I going to go through all of his films. Because he has such an extensive filmography dating all the way back into the 70s, into the late 60s, I believe, even. Um, but I'm going to go in chronological order of the movies that touched me specifically. Well, not specifically, obviously, but profoundly, deeply, whenever I watch them. I'm going to start from the most his first films and then start working his way up to the more recent ones. The first one that I want to go over was the movie he made. Was a movie he made in 1971 called Land of Silence and Darkness. He interviews. Well, he examines the life of an old woman. Her name is, I believe, Finney Staubinger or something like that. Stop. Not sure, but she's an old woman that she's been blind and deaf since her teens, and she works on behalf of other blind and deaf people, and the film really does, and Werner Herzog's not noted for being very impartial in his documentaries. This one it definitely shows how interesting that he can make this subject to anyone who's not, actually going through that. It has, like, it extenuates the struggle that people who are deaf and blind at the same time, with the struggle that they have to go through in order to exist in the world, and also the fact that they are almost completely isolated from the world. They can't see, they can't hear, they can only feel. I mean, they're almost completely cut off from the entirety of the world. I mean, if you think about the majority of things that you have to do during your day, seeing and hearing is definitely two of the most important ones. And Herzog makes a very good show of that. He makes a very good documentation of this type of struggle with these people. And it's done, and it gives the people the respect that they deserve and they ask for. And I really do think that very few documentaries that I've seen, or very few films on the subject that I've seen, deal with that type of condition or any type of those types of abnormalities in that kind of way, especially with being blind and deaf. Like, everyone recites the movies like The Miracle Worker, even though me, personally, I didn't think The Miracle Worker was all that good. As a matter of fact, I'd be much better off watching the Bollywood film Black, which is basically the same story, but it's far more emotional. And also this film, Land of Silence and Darkness, it really does touch home in a strange kind of way, and it's sad that not many people really reference this or even watch it, for that matter. I have never heard it talked about in film classes or in a documentary class or anything like that, which is a little depressing to me. But moving on, his next film up the list was made the year afterward, and that was Aguirre, The Wrath of God. Now, this is where a lot of people know about his work. This is one of the films he worked with the infamous Klaus Kinski, who was an actor who hated directors with a passion, and I'm surprised Herzog went back to him so many times, and he's going to be in a couple more of the films that I talk about. But in Aguirre, The Wrath of God, the whole film is supposed to be about a Spanish expedition going into the mountains of Peru, into the Amazon, where they're basically to find El Dorado, the city of gold. I don't remember if they exactly call it that in the movie, but Don Aguirre is like this ruthless man who's played by Klaus Kinski. He's this ruthless man who's all concerned about money, and he becomes their leader. And it basically puts all of this this troop of people against all these tests of nature in the Amazon, and you really do get to see the ingenuity in the camera work that comes out. Aguirre the Wrath of God is very, very well shot. It's very well paced, which is really interesting because one of the big hallmarks of Werner Herzog's filmmaking is that he's very improvisational. He doesn't storyboard. He often improvises large sections of the script, which he does frequently in a movie that I'm going to get to, and in Aguirre, you can tell that there is this spontaneity to the film that you don't really see in a lot of work. Like, you literally feel like this is documenting these people. It's not like all this found footage stuff where everybody, you can tell, is playing to the camera. And, because it's supposed to be, the found footage thing. But in this one, it's almost like there's an invisible cameraman getting this found footage of this expedition into the Amazon. And it's very, very taut, very suspenseful. Klaus Kinski does a great job in this role. He does a great job pretty much in anything that I've seen him in, but he does a great job in this role. Werner Herzog, you can tell that he has this unbelievable respect for the material, but also at the same time, he spends 93 minutes just kind of going nuts on the whole subject, but the script is very well put together. And that brings me to his next film, which was made in 1976, called Heart of Glass. And this one, it's centered around a small village that's renowned for its the glass works in its town. That's meant that they create ruby glass. And when the foreman of the glass works dies, and he doesn't reveal the secret of the ruby glass, the town kind of slides into this deep depression, and the owner of the glassworks is obsessed with finding this lost secret in order to bring everyone back up again. And this is probably one of his, I guess, lesser-known films, because I don't remember that many people ever talking about this movie. I happened to find it by chance, because there was like this poor bootleg rendition VHS that I found of this movie that came from a print of the original film. I don't know how in the world that this thing found its way into my hands. I think I found it at a garage sale. I'm not even sure. I haven't even looked into it. I'm not even sure if this movie has an official release or not. I'm pretty sure it does, but I'm not entirely certain. But this movie, man, much like Aguirre, it's very well shot. It's nowhere near as impactful as Aguirre. It doesn't have the same punch that Aguirre did when it came down to the story. But then again, at the same time, like, it wasn't supposed to. This one's more supposed to be emotional rather than like this epic scale of whether or not they're going to find a city of gold or be destroyed entirely. And so, actually, I love the title. Actually, I love how the title kind of Heart of Glass really goes to the point in which the glass is ruby. It's red colored. It's like the color of heart. It's the color of a heart, and the fact that everything is hinging on this secret, the heart of the making of this type of glass. The title alone suggests all this duality with the story, and unfortunately, I don't know that many of the actors involved. They're not people that I normally associate straight out of my head. But it's definitely a film to check out if you can. You have to double check my knowledge, but I'm not sure if they even have a DVD release for this film. Moving forward into 1979, we have Nosferatu the Vampyre, which was great. It's Werner Herzog's basically his interpretation and remake of the original Nosferatu by F.W. Murnau. And it's basically, the whole Jonathan Harker goes to Count Dracula's castle to sell him a house in England. In this case, it's in Varna. And Count Dracula is a vampire, and he's played by Klaus Kinski. which I think is probably Klaus Kinski's best role that I've seen him in, even more than the ones I'm going to get to, the one that I'm going to get to. But I think this is his best role. I think he plays Count Dracula with such emotion, because unlike the original Nosferatu, unlike a lot of vampires movies, this one is not really about Jonathan and Mina Harker. Oh wait, no, sorry. It's Lucy Harker in this one, because kind of Lucy and Mina kind of blended together in this one. I mean, as I said, it was an adaptation. And so, this one's not really about not about Jonathan Harker. It's not about succumbing over the odds of Dracula and just kind of vanquishing the foe and whatnot, because we've all seen that before. So Herzog took this idea and warped it, and then it became in which being a vampire is a curse. I mean, like, you see it in other movies like, Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, and, even in Nosferatu, in which the pains in which that these creatures live very solitary lives. This one, however, is more about the fact that the vampire curse is the fact of not being able to die. It's not the fact that being able to live forever and not being able to die. Like, it's not the fact that he has to drink blood that's the curse. It's not the. And actually, this concept has been gone over a few times after that this movie has been made, but at the same time, it's such more of an emotional piece, and it's shot brilliantly. It pays homage to Murnau's film in spades. It's wonderful to see how this gets pulled together. And again, Klaus Kinski is an amazing actor to watch in this film. He literally is set up to look like Max Schreck in Nosferatu. That's Count Orlok. But in this one, he plays Dracula, but he looks the exact same way. And you can see all of these little hints to the original film that one, film nuts all over the place will go crazy for. But other than that, also, you kind of pull in this new vibe to the story, this new flavor, as you would, to this story that it's very unique in and of itself, and it's a very vastly underrated vampire film. In the age in which we are living in the age of so many crappy vampire films with, the fucking Twilight movies and whatnot. I mean, you go back into the 70s, you have, like, the Dracula film with Christopher Lee. But at the same time, this one is much more of a piece that strikes home with me. It is emotional. It's very well thought out. It's not played entirely for scares. It's more of a tragedy than anything else. It mimics a lot of the nuances in the original perfectly, and I love it. But moving on to the next one, in 1982, he came out with the movie Fitzcarraldo. Now, I think the best way to get acquainted with this movie, even before you see it necessarily, unless you care about spoilers, then definitely watch this movie and then watch the documentary that was made off of it called Burden of Dreams, which explains the whole filmmaking process behind Fitzcarraldo. In Fitzcarraldo, it's about the man Fitzcarraldo, who is a rubber baron, and he goes out into the jungle to continue harvesting his rubber business. And there's a part in the movie in which he hauls a tugboat over a mountain. Now, in the movie Burden of Dreams, you realize the fact that Werner Herzog literally cut a path across a mountain from one part of the Amazon to the next, and they hauled the boat over it because he wanted to get that shot. You could have easily just mimicked stuff, but he wasn't going to have it. And this is his longest movie of the ones that I've reviewed today. It runs about 158 minutes long, give or take. I'm not sure exactly. But I'm pulling together with the information from Burden of Dreams as well, because Burden of Dreams is definitely something you should watch as a companion piece to this film. One, you come to realize how nuts Werner Herzog is, and I love the fact because, he does these insane things on set. I remember on the set of Aguirre, The Wrath of God, it said in the in a interview with him, they said basically he was getting into a major row with Klaus Kinski on set, and Klaus threatened to walk off set, and Werner held a gun to his head, and he's like, he basically threatened that, even if I shot you, I can just tell the people that it was a hunting accident, pay him $20 and they'll look the other way. I mean, literally, he was on the verge of killing Kinski, so he would finish the film. And in Fitzcarraldo, there's, toward the climax of the movie, I'm not going to say the details entirely because it's a really great film, but there's a scene in which the tugboat had to smash up a guy against the side of a mountain while it's going down the river, so they literally drove it to some of the most dangerous rapids in Peru, and it began ramming against the side of the cliffs in order to get it accurate. I remember, people came out with broken ribs. They had, gashes across their face because of falling rocks. I mean, this shows the lengths that he's willing to get his vision. And also, Fitzcarraldo is about, from what I've gathered from the movie itself and also what I've gathered from the documentary, it's about 60% improvised, and probably a lot less than that, but I'm kind of giving you a bit of a wide range. And it's really amazing to see it work because this is a vast movie. This movie costs tons of money. I'm not sure exactly its full budget. I know Aguirre, The Wrath of God costs about $300,000. Give or take, from what I remember. But I'm not sure Fitzcarraldo cost, an untold sum of money. It was probably his most expensive film to date at that time. But, it's just amazing to see how he could work with all the reality of what's around him. And Klaus Kinski plays Fitzcarraldo. Now, originally Fitzcarraldo was going to be played, if I understand correctly, I'm not sure. I can't remember who was going to play Fitzcarraldo, but originally the person who's set to play, he is kind of assistant and whatnot. It was going to be Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones. And apparently in Burden of Dreams, they have footage that was of Mick Jagger that was shot for the film, but actually all of that footage, except for the stuff in Burden of Dreams, was all destroyed because Werner Herzog has a habit of destroying all unused footage. And so it really kind of sucks that we were not able to see that type of performance from Mick Jagger, because Mick Jagger was up for even as Alex DeLarge in The Clockwork Orange, besides Malcolm McDowell when it came out. So, I mean, I was interested to see if Mick Jagger could really act as well as these major directors took him to be. But, moving on, I kind of jump a decade because, unfortunately, I haven't really watched anything that he came out with in the 90s, or at least I can't remember that I have. And I kind of skipped to 2001, which is his film Invincible. And this one, people are kind of torn on. Invincible stars Tim Roth, who is probably one of my all-time favorite actors. And it's based on a true story of a Jewish blacksmith's son, if I got that right, from Poland, who becomes kind of like this mythological strongman, this mythical strongman. And his employer, I can't remember who plays him, he kind of has this dream of establishing this cult to secure all of Hitler's power on Earth. It's the Ministry of the Occult, I believe it's called. And no, sorry. It was the Ministry of the Occult in Hitler's government. I don't know if it was to, kind of press forward Hitler's government. But at that time, Berlin kind of erupts in all of this violence against, Jews. And Bright, Breitbart, Z-shaped Breitbart, I believe the character's name is, but he goes because he's plagued by nightmares. He goes to take counsel with a rabbi, and he decides he's going to use his strength in order to try to save people. Now, a lot of times, I haven't seen the full cut of this film. The full cut was 133 minutes. I saw the U.S. release, which was 125 minutes, so it cut out about 8 minutes of footage. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I'm not sure if it's, entirely necessary or whatnot, but regardless of the fact. But this movie, I think, was a very unique piece. It's very well shot, just like all of the rest of Herzog's films, but at the same time, there's kind of like this dreamlike quality to it. I think is involving the nightmares. He kind of just like spread it out through the entire film, so that you have this entire, this basic feeling that, this is like almost a nightmare. The entirety of this film is a nightmare. And Tim Roth does a great job, but then again, in my view, I don't think I've seen Tim Roth given a bad performance ever, and he really he holds my attention probably more than it should. I mean, there are parts in the film in which it lags, but at the same time, the overall aesthetic of the movie keeps me A, entertained, and also B, it keeps me thinking. Now, at the same time, you could say certain parts of this film are cop-outs, and I can definitely see the reasonings why, because there are certain parts of the film that are kind of weak. Definitely not necessarily the strongest Herzog film I've seen, but still, compared to a lot of other 2001 movies, it definitely takes the cake. It's a really strong piece. It's got a really interesting subject matter. I believe it's filmed almost all on location in Germany. I could be wrong on that one, but I believe it is. Moving on a few years later to 2005, in which he created The Grizzly Man. Now, this is probably one of his most well-known films. It's a documentary of all this other real found footage from Timothy Treadwell, who is this amateur grizzly bear expert who spent his life living out amongst grizzly bears in Alaska. And then, during one outing, he and his girlfriend, Amy, were killed by a rogue bear in 2003-ish, I'm sure. But in the film, it intercuts Timothy's actual footage that he got while he was living out there, and also stuff amongst, people who knew him, all these people who are involved in Treadwell's life. And the whole thing is narrated by Herzog. And he doesn't give you a completely, a completely objective view. He tells you what he thinks about this. He tells you also that he doesn't agree with Treadwell's philosophy, and he explains why. He doesn't just say why. He doesn't just say, he doesn't agree with it and that's that. He really does go into in-depth reasons to explain why, and he uses the interviews and the footage to further explore his point. But that's another thing, I never expect to have a completely unbiased documentary from Werner Herzog, but then again, at the same time, it's not like I want to. I want to know his opinion on these things, because I think that his opinion has extreme validation. It has a lot of validity with me, because of the work he does, because of the vast range of subjects he covers, and Grizzly Man is just a really well-made film. All the pieces that were added by Herzog, and it was set up together, and how the information is presented, and also how the death is handled. It's done with respect. It's done with real solemn connection to humanity, and also it explores the difference between a love and obsession, and and the rationality between both of these types of ideas. And I just love it. Because it's a horrible thing to see what happened to this man and his girlfriend. It's horrible to see what these people went through because of this. But at the same time, Herzog says it's okay to hold this person accountable for what he did. And a lot of people in the movie say that. So I really do think that, in a way, even though it does not offer an objective viewpoint, it helps spark an objective debate on whether or not this was logical or not. What exactly was gotten out of Timothy Treadwell's death. Pushing forward 2 years later, this is when everyone really kind of got to know Werner Herzog with his documentary Encounters at the End of the World. And this documentary speaks for itself. It was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Documentary, and it was about Herzog going to Antarctica, and thus, going to Antarctica, he's now the only living director in history to ever do a film on every single continent. And Encounters at the End of the World. It goes through the life of the creatures in there, but the animals that live in Antarctica, but also the people who live on the research centers, and the interactions they have with the rest of the world, the types of people that they are. And also, he views Antarctica as more of a character in and of itself, the actual continent. And he plays with tons of ideas involving the death of language and, life beneath the ocean tied in together with, blackouts, whiteouts, blizzards in Antarctica. I mean, he covers all of these vastly different array of different topics, and it's pretty amazing to watch him work. And the cinematography is just unbelievable. It's the best cinematography in any of his films by far. And the score is just eerie, it's haunting, but also it's really majestical. It makes you really kind of feel your way, rather than think your way through this documentary. You react emotionally to it. And going to the last two films, they both made in the same year, and they're the most recent films of his that I've seen to date. And that was Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call of New Orleans, and My Son, What Have You Done? Bad Lieutenant, is not a sequel to Abel Ferrara's Bad Lieutenant starring Harvey Keitel. And that's what a lot of people have misconceptions with. This movie is not a sequel. It's not even an in-name only sequel. It was chosen by the producers. Herzog didn't even want to have that title on there. But it stars Nicolas Cage in probably the best performance of his entire career, in my opinion. More than anything else. Leaving Las Vegas adaptation, nothing. And this performance is definitely his best. Also, it shows, again, the weirdness, but also the ingenuity of Herzog as a director. It throws random iguanas into the scene, but at the same time, he can direct people so astonishingly well that you buy it. You buy everything that kind of put into here. And it has some great actors in it. I mean, even Eva Mendes is in it. Brad Dourif is in it, and he does a really great job. I'm really glad to see he's getting a lot more popular. Like, I saw him in Lord of the Rings and Deadwood. I mean, I remember the first movie I ever saw him in was in Child's Play. I'm glad he's getting a lot of really serious, really great work. At the same time, Bad Lieutenant is about basically, I love how my friend Zach put it. Imagine the worst, most brutal, most corrupt cop in the world. He would be afraid of this guy. And I definitely think that that's the case because it's just played together so well that I just love it. And it definitely is probably one of my all-time favorite Herzog films, and also one of my favorite films in general. Moving on to My Son, What Have You Done? It stars Michael Shannon, who's also in Bad Lieutenant, but in a small role. It stars Michael Shannon, Willem Dafoe, also Chloe Sevigny, and it's... I'm afraid I don't remember the actual name of the person that they're basing this on, because it's based on a real person. It's also produced by David Lynch, which got me really interested in it. It's a very weird movie. It's very the acting is over the top, but it's done very purposefully. Herzog doesn't do anything without intending on doing it. I rarely have ever seen any botch in a movie of his due to his own, doing. But at the same time, it's very weird. It's about a guy who came back from South America, all changed and kind of nuts, and he kills his mother and barricades himself in a neighbor's house. And the whole movie is about mixing together with flashbacks of what led to this point, and also this stand down he's having between the cops and him. And it's bombastic. It's in your face. It's very funny in several ways. Also, Brad Dourif is in this one too. It's very funny in many ways. It's very confusing in a lot of ways. But then again, at the same time, if you're thinking for a project between David Lynch and Werner Herzog, I couldn't imagine a better combination. It has been kind of flatlined by a lot of critics, but I think it's a great movie. The cinematography is great. The lighting is great. The pacing, I think, is really well done. The pacing is not as good as Bad Lieutenant, but it's still really well put together. But that's all of the movies that I'm going to go over for Werner Herzog. He has made so many more than that. I think he's made probably into the 30s, probably more of movies. And he's been working constantly to make these films. And I believe that he's probably one of the greatest auteurs still out there. He's someone who's always willing to experiment with new styles, new genres, new anything, really, which I think is essential for a filmmaker to survive. He needs to be innovative. He or she, they need to be innovative regardless of what medium, what genre, or what niche that they're usually supplying themselves to. Just like Satoshi Kon with animation, he innovates. His first film was much more on the lines of traditional anime. Then his later works became completely his own style, very much the same way as Werner Herzog, but yet his unique style came out as early as the early 70s with like The Land of Silence and Darkness and Aguirre, The Wrath of God. And he has never let up. He's also made really big films like Rescue Dawn with Christian Bale, which I have not yet seen, but I've seen a lot about. And also, he recently just came out with several documentaries. There's one, I believe, The Cave of Forgotten Dreams, which is about the caves in France in which they discover, they photograph the world's oldest drawings. And also, he did another one that he just recently came out with, I believe, about inmates on death row in Texas. So the next person that we add to the list of greatest directors right underneath Satoshi Kon is Werner Herzog.